Welcome to Dark Character Profiler. Take a deep dive into the background and personalities of villains from books, video games, manga, and comics. Psychological analysis of some of the most deviant and heinous characters of all time. Now, here's Fulcrum.
Welcome to Dark Character Profiler, where we step into the minds of fiction's most infamous figures. I'm Fulcrum, your host and guide into the shadows. Each episode, I take you beyond the story and into the psychology, exploring motives, diagnoses, and the darker truths that drive these characters. Together, we'll uncover what makes them tick, what breaks them, and why their darkness continues to fascinate us. Let's begin.
Dark Character Profile.
Case log 0623. Subject, Bertan Duarte. Former assassin for the Medina organization. Now a slaughterhouse worker at Escort. The first time I heard about him, someone described the sound of his hammer. Steady, precise, never missing the mark. They said it was the same rhythm he used when he took lives for hire. Different job, same sound. Bertan's story isn't one of simple cruelty. It's a slow unraveling of a man who once killed without question and now lives haunted by every face he's ever erased. Tonight, I'm opening his file to see what happens when guilt refuses to die and whether the man left behind is still capable of redemption. When I first read through Bertan Duarte's records, it felt less like reading about a criminal and more like studying the remains of someone burned down to instinct. He used to work for a criminal network called Medina, a professional killer, trained to silence people cleanly and walk away. That part's straightforward. What came after, the accidental killing of a 12-year-old girl, that's when his story fractures. From that moment, Bertan began to lose himself. He left Medina and took a job as a quote-unquote knocker, the person who stuns cattle before slaughter. Day after day, blow after blow, he repeated the same motion that once ended human lives. His work became punishment, mechanical penance for a sin he couldn't forget. He sees ghosts. He hears voices. He talks to the dead as if they never left. Somewhere inside him lives another self, the knocker, cold, efficient, emotionless. A shadow that surfaces whenever the real Bertan can't bear to feel.
So what happened with the little girl? What little girl? The one you killed. There was a guy named Chino. He was a campesino. He was on my death squad list. You had a list? Yep. Medina wanted those campesinos dead. Or at least dead enough inside that they'd stop so we could get their land. I can see why they made you nervous. Yes. And the little girl? She was Chino's daughter. I went to their home late one night. I thought they'd all be sleeping. I broke in. I saw the light on in the bathroom. I figured maybe it was Chino, so I quietly stepped up to the bathroom door. I had my gun out in one hand and pressed the door slowly open with the other. I had to be quick. The silencer was on the gun so the family wouldn't hear. I was supposed to be in and out. As soon as I opened the door, I pulled the trigger. I didn't wait to make sure. You never wait. You just shoot. And then I saw the girl fall into the bathtub. Blood all over the walls. Next, Think I know the mom is running down the hall, screaming. Don't know how she heard me, so I had to shoot her too. And then Chino? Yes. We got into a fight. Then I grabbed his head and slammed it into the bathroom sink, and he fell unconscious. Then I shot him, just to be sure.
Trauma history. Bertan's entire life is built around trauma. First, the conditioning under Medina. Years of orders, violence, and emotional erasure. Then the child, the one who wasn't supposed to be there. That single mistake becomes the cornerstone of everything that follows. The nightmares, the hallucinations, the blackouts. His time at S-Corp is a kind of cruel therapy. Each time Bertan pressed the trigger on the tool used to stun the cattle, the sound and recoil brought him right back to his past. The same precision, the same silence before death. Different target, same act. Every day on the floor felt like reliving the life he'd tried to escape. Mental state. When you imagine Bertan, don't picture madness in the dramatic sense. He isn't screaming or raving. He's quiet, too quiet. He looks tired, detached. His voice barely rises above the hum of the machinery around him. He knows he's not well, and that's part of the tragedy. He's aware of his fractures, but doesn't believe he deserves repair. Sometimes he slips into that other voice, the knocker, without realizing it. And when he comes back, he acts like nothing happened. He's living in two worlds. The present, where he's trying to stay human, and the past, where he stopped being one. Fulcrum's personality breakdown. Before I get into Bertan's personality, let me explain how I measure it. I use what I call Fulcrum's hurricane scale, a way to read the emotional weather inside someone's head. A Category 1 storm means calm seas with a little wind. Category 2 brings tension you can still control. At Category 3, emotions start steering decisions. Category 4 tears through stability. And Category 5, that's when the storm becomes a way of life. Now, here's how Bertan's emotional climate looks through that scale. Imagination and insight. Category 3. His mind never really shuts off. He finds meaning in everything, even where there isn't any. It's what keeps him empathetic and what keeps him haunted. Control and order. Category 4. Structure is his lifeline. Every habit, every pattern is about control. If he stops moving with precision, the chaos breaks through. Social energy. Category 1. He's distant by choice. Silence feels safer than connection, because connection always ends in loss. Compassion and cooperation. Category 2 to 3. When he's calm, there's kindness in him. Genuine, quiet kindness. But the moment the storm rises, he retreats into survival mode. Unpredictability. Category 5. This is the hurricane's heart. Guilt, anger, grief, and fear churn together with no eye of calm. One day, he's the penitent man, the next, the executioner. Even he doesn't know which version is coming. Most people face the occasional thunderstorm. Bertan lives in the place where hurricanes are born, where calm is just the silence before the next wave. Moral beliefs. If you asked Bertan what he believes in, he'd probably tell you he doesn't. But underneath the despair is a kind of faith, not in God, but in punishment. He doesn't think he can be forgiven, so he punishes himself through routine, through isolation, through never letting himself feel peace. That's what makes him interesting psychologically. He's not evil. He's exhausted by what he's done. He's trying to balance the scales, even though he knows they'll never even out. Relationships. Bertan doesn't really have relationships. He has ghosts. The people from his past, the ones he killed, the ones he lost, stay louder in his head than anyone he meets in real life. With his coworkers, he's polite but distant. He doesn't want to connect because connection might lead to loss again. His relationship with himself is the most violent one of all. Two sides of one man constantly fighting for control. Historical parallels. First, we have John Newton, once a slave ship captain, later the writer of Amazing Grace. Both men lived in the aftermath of a moral catastrophe. Newton sought redemption through faith, Bertan through pain. Second, we have Viktor Frankl, an Austrian neurologist, psychiatrist, philosopher, and Holocaust survivor who taught that meaning can come from suffering. Bertan embodies that idea. His suffering is his meaning. And finally, we have Oskar Schindler, a man who profited from cruelty, then risked everything to undo it. Bertan's shift from assassin to protector mirrors that same arc. Before we continue with the episode, I want to take a moment to thank all of you who've been listening and supporting Dark Character Profiler. Every play, every follow, every vote on the polls really helps shape the direction of this show. I started this project because I wanted to dig deeper into the psychology of dark and complex characters. But it's the conversations with you, the listeners, that keep it alive. Your support means more than I can say, and I'm grateful to have you here with me each week as we explore the darker corners of fiction together.
Dark Character Profile.
Criminal behavior. Yes, Bertan killed people, but he's not a serial killer or a sadist. He was a weapon, someone else's tool, and he knows it. He followed orders, and that obedience became his curse. After he left Medina, there's no sign of him hurting anyone again. The violence turned inward, nightmares, guilt, and self-destruction. If you asked me to assess risk, he's not dangerous to others anymore. He's dangerous to himself.
And now, the final analysis. But first, just a little house cleaning.
This podcast is for entertainment and educational purposes only. While we use the DSM-5 as a framework to provide psychological analyses of fictional characters, the discussions are not intended to diagnose, treat, or provide professional mental health advice. The interpretations shared are based on hypothetical scenarios and creative exploration and should not be applied to actual individuals or situations. For mental health concerns or diagnoses, please consult a licensed professional. Listener discretion is advised.
Dark Character Profile.
Psychological testing. If we put Bertan through modern psychological tests, we'd find severe depression and trauma. He carries chronic guilt and emptiness. High dissociation. He loses time, memories, and even identity when stressed. Almost no psychopathy. He feels too much, not too little. and maximum moral injury. He can't forgive himself, even for things beyond his control. In simple terms, his mind is a tug of war between pain and the instinct to survive it. Diagnostic summary. 1. Complex post-traumatic stress disorder, also known as CPTSD. He's endured years of trauma that rewired how he thinks and feels. Flashbacks, guilt, avoidance, and emotional shutdown all are part of the cycle. 2. Dissociative identity disorder. His brain created, quote-unquote, the knocker as a survival tool, a version of himself that could kill when he couldn't. When the pressure builds, the knocker takes over. 3. Major depressive disorder. Chronic sadness, exhaustion, hopelessness, and self-punishment define his emotional baseline. And 4. Moral injury. Not a clinical disorder, but still significant. It's what happens when your actions violate your own moral code. Bertan lives entirely inside that wound. Final thoughts. When I look at Bertan Duarte, I don't see a monster. I see a man who's been devoured by the idea of justice without mercy. He lives in the echo of his own guilt, trying to make the world right by breaking himself down. Psychologically, he's fragmented but aware. Forensically, he's not a threat to others. But every day, he wakes up in the ring with his own past, and I don't think he'll ever stop swinging. Maybe that's his redemption, or maybe that's his punishment. That brings us to the question I want to leave you with today. Thrawn isn't just brilliant. He's controlled, calculated, and almost eerily calm under pressure. But when you peel back the strategy and the art analysis, what psychological engine do you think is really driving him? For this week's discussion, I want you to weigh in on a few diagnostic possibilities I'll be exploring in my Thrawn redo episode. Which of these psychological profiles do you think fits Thrawn best? Obsessive-compulsive personality traits, rigid structure, perfectionism, and absolute order above all else? Narcissistic personality traits, not the flashy kind, but the cold, quiet superiority rooted in culture, intellect, and strategic dominance. Schizoid personality traits, emotional detachment, limited expression, and a worldview built almost entirely on analysis rather than interpersonal connection. Or no disorder at all, simply a highly trained, highly disciplined military strategist functioning exactly as intended. Leave your answer in the comments section. I always read through them, and your interpretations help steer the conversation for the full forensic breakdown. I'm genuinely curious to see where you land on this one. And with that, I'll let the outro take it from here.
Dark character profile.
That concludes this profile on the darker corners of the mind. Whether born from trauma, obsession, or the lust for power, these characters remind us just how thin the line is between order and chaos. If you found this analysis compelling, make sure to follow Dark Character Profiler on your favorite podcast platform. Leave a review and share this episode with others who dare to peek into the shadows. Until next time, stay curious, stay critical, and remember, the darkness is always closer than it seems.
Thank you for listening to Dark Character Profiler with Fulcrum. Listen every other Tuesday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Podcasts. Humanity was not meant to live this way. Society is left to the mercy of murderers and cutthroats. Hear Paige Zaplin Dam's epic tale brought to life in an audiobook. For years, Slade had felt secure in the forest. I am from simple, humble beginnings. I was raised in the Ironwood by an Ogress, an Anaral. He saw immediately that she was beyond a healer's aid. Even a skilled witch could not help her recover from losing so much blood. Mother? Slade thought he wanted revenge. Instead, he got redemption. A kingdom of ash and steam, The Ogress's Son, a dystopian neo-dark age fantasy, narrated by Rich Frazier. Now available on iTunes and Audible. I promise you I will find whoever did this and avenge you, Mother.